My name is Elena Brooks. And according to my family, I was unemployed. Not technically, not legally, but socially, reputationally, absolutely. For 6 years, I built a freelance design career from scratch: branding, digital campaigns, product visuals. I worked from my apartment in Atlanta, pulling all-nighters, chasing clients, learning contracts, surviving on ramen and caffeine. But in my mother's house, none of that counted. Freelance meant jobless. Remote meant lazy. Creative meant confused. My younger sister, Brianna, worked in corporate banking. Structured hours. Structured salary. Structured life. That apparently was real. I was the family experiment. The phase. The one who still hadn't figured it out. Every holiday dinner came with the same ritual. Dad carving turkey. Mom refilling glasses. And someone eventually asking, "So, still doing the little design thing?" Little. As if I was finger painting in a basement. Last Thanksgiving, Uncle Ray laughed and said, "Must be nice not having a boss." I smiled politely. I had 8 clients at the time. 8 bosses. None of them paid late, though. Unlike family respect. But the humiliation peaked at Brianna's 26th birthday party. Mom planned it like a wedding. 50 guests. Caterers? No. Why would she pay professionals when she had me? "Elena, you'll handle the food," she announced 2 weeks before the party. Handle? I asked carefully. Cooking. Serving. Setup. Cleanup. Alone. "Well," she shrugged. "You're the only one without a real job. You have time." She said it casually, like she wasn't stabbing something delicate inside me. Dad didn't correct her. He never did. Brianna giggled from the couch. "Consider it exposure, sis." Exposure. I was being assigned unpaid labor in my own parents' home, and they framed it as generosity. For a moment I almost said no. Almost. But here's the thing about being the unemployed child. You feel like you owe everyone proof. So I said yes. The morning of the party, I arrived at 7 a.m. Groceries covered the counters. 3 ovens going. 2 stovetops running. 50 place settings. I cooked for 9 hours straight. No break. No thank you. By 4 p.m., guests began arriving. Perfume and cologne filled the air. Laughter echoed through the house. And there I was. In an apron. Hair tied back. Carrying trays. I caught snippets of conversation as I passed through rooms. "Brianna just got promoted. 6-figure path already. She's always been the driven one." No one asked about me. Until Aunt Carla did. She spotted me balancing drinks. "Elena, are you catering now?" The room chuckled. Mom swooped in. No. She's still figuring out her career. Figuring out. 6 years of contracts. National clients. Sleepless nights. Reduced to figuring out. I felt heat climb my neck. I started. Mom cut me off. She works from home. Designs things. Nothing stable yet. Stable. My income had outpaced Brianna's for 2 years. They just didn't know it. Because I stopped telling them numbers after Dad once said, "Freelance money disappears as fast as it comes." But what none of them knew that night. 2 weeks earlier, I had signed the largest contract of my career. $240,000. A year-long branding overhaul for a regional tech corporation expanding nationally. I signed the agreement digitally at 2:13 a.m., alone in my apartment, crying quietly because for the first time, I felt seen professionally. The CEO had called my portfolio strategically brilliant. Strategically brilliant. But in my parents' kitchen, I was unpaid staff. By 6 p.m. my feet ached. Brianna was opening gifts. Mom clinked her glass. "I just want to say how proud we are of Brianna," she beamed. "She's disciplined. Focused. She chose a real path." The word real echoed like a slap. "And we all know success comes from commitment," she added, glancing briefly toward the kitchen. The implication hung in the air. I gripped the serving tray tighter. Then Dad laughed lightly and said, "Maybe some people just don't like structure." More laughter. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just clearly. I was done auditioning for respect. I walked back into the kitchen, set the tray down and pulled out my phone. A text notification glowed on the screen. From Marcus Hale. "Ew. I'll arrive around 7. Looking forward to meeting your family. I had almost forgotten. 2 days earlier, Marcus mentioned he was in town and wanted to drop off a revised timeline in person before our Monday meeting. I hesitated before giving him the address, but I gave it anyway. At 7:12 p.m. the doorbell rang. I was carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Mom opened the door. Her posture changed instantly. Professional smile. Hello. Marcus stepped inside. Tall. Composed. Expensive suit without trying too hard. I'm here for Elena Brooks. Mom blinked. Elena. He smiled politely. Yes. We're working together. Working together. Not freelancing. Not dabbling. Working. I stepped forward. Marcus. His eyes scanned the room, the guests, the decorations, the trays in my hands. You weren't kidding about hosting tonight, he said lightly. Hosting? Mom laughed nervously. Oh, she's just helping. Helping. Marcus glanced at the apron tied around my waist. His expression shifted. Subtle. Observant. You must be very proud, he said to my parents. Your daughter just secured one of the most competitive contracts in our region. The room quieted. Mom's smile froze. Contract. Dad repeated. Marcus nodded casually. Yes. We're investing heavily in her vision. $240,000 to start. Silence flooded the house. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Brianna's face went pale. Uncle Ray stopped mid-sip. Mom laughed weakly. That can't be right. Marcus turned slightly toward her. I don't misquote numbers. It wasn't aggressive. Just factual. And suddenly I wasn't the girl in an apron anymore. I was the professional he respected. Dad cleared his throat. Well, we didn't realize. No, I said calmly. You didn't. I untied the apron slowly. Set it on the counter. For 6 years you've called my career unstable. Imaginary. A phase. The room remained frozen. I cooked today because I thought maybe if I showed up enough, you'd see me differently. I looked at Mom. You never planned to. Her eyes glistened not from guilt, from shock. I turned to Marcus. Give me 5 minutes? He nodded. I walked to the center of the living room. I won't be finishing cleanup tonight, I said evenly. I have a meeting. Brianna scoffed. You're seriously leaving during my party? I met her gaze. I've been here since 7 this morning. She had no answer. Dad tried one last attempt at authority. Elena, don't embarrass us. I smiled softly. I'm not. And I walked out. With the CEO. Past 50 stunned guests. Past the narrative they had built about me. Into the night air that felt lighter than it had in years. As we reached his car, Marcus glanced at me. You okay? I exhaled slowly. For the first time in a long time. And that was only the beginning. Because the real shift wasn't the money. It wasn't the contract. It was the boundary. And once you set one, you can't go back. The morning after the party, my phone exploded. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. All from family. Funny how quickly unemployed turns into we need to talk once money is mentioned. I didn't answer. Instead, I made coffee in my quiet apartment and opened my laptop. Because unlike humiliation, contracts don't pause for drama. Marcus had emailed revised timelines at 6:12 a.m. Professional. Focused. Respectful. Everything my family wasn't. By noon, Mom showed up at my door. Unannounced. She looked smaller somehow. Less certain. You embarrassed us, she said before even sitting down. I leaned against the kitchen counter. No, I replied calmly. You underestimated me publicly. He corrected you. Her lips pressed thin. You could have told us about the contract. I tried telling you about my career for 6 years. That's different. No, I said softly. It isn't. She shifted tactics. Well, we're proud of you. The words felt rehearsed. New. Uncomfortable in her mouth. I didn't smile. Pride isn't something you turn on when it becomes profitable. Her eyes flickered. Then came the real reason she was there. Your father mentioned, maybe you could contribute more now. There it was. Not apology. Access. Contribute to what? Well, renovations. Brianna's student loans. The house could use updating. I almost laughed. I had just been unpaid staff in that same house. And now I was an investment opportunity. I'm investing in my business, I said evenly. Her tone hardened. Don't forget who raised you. I stepped closer. I won't. That's exactly why I won't repeat it. She left without hugging me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty watching her walk away. Brianna called that night. Not to congratulate me. To compete. So, $240,000 is gross or net? She asked casually. Gross. Oh, she said like she'd expected more. Well, corporate bonuses can exceed that. I smiled to myself. This isn't a bonus. It's still freelance, she insisted. There was something frantic in her voice. Threatened. I don't need you to validate it, I replied. You're acting different, she accused. No, I said calmly. I'm acting aware. She hung up. Over the next few weeks, something fascinating happened. My family began performing respect. Dad would text, "How's the big project?" Mom would send articles about entrepreneurship. Brianna posted a vague Instagram caption, "Proud of my sister's creative journey." Creative journey. As if I was backpacking through Europe finding myself. They still didn't understand scale. They understood image. And suddenly my success was useful for theirs. At Sunday dinner, Mom introduced me to guests as, "This is our daughter. She runs a design firm." Runs a design firm. We had upgraded. I watched her closely. She said it like a trophy. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a headline. That night Dad pulled me aside. We were thinking, maybe you could design the new branding for my company. Family discount, of course. Of course. There it was again. Access disguised as closeness. My rate is my rate, I said gently. He frowned. You charge your own father? You've been charging me emotionally for years. He didn't laugh. But the real fracture came 3 months later. Marcus invited me to speak at a regional business summit. A keynote panel. Entrepreneurship in emerging markets. I almost declined. Public speaking terrified me. But then I remembered standing in that kitchen. Apron on. Invisible. And I accepted. The event was held at a luxury downtown hotel. Press. Cameras. Industry leaders. And guess who showed up uninvited? My parents. Front row. Dressed like this was their achievement ceremony. Mom waved when she spotted me backstage. I felt something twist in my stomach. Not pride. Performance anxiety. During the Q&A, someone asked, "What was the biggest obstacle in your journey?" I paused. I could have said funding. Imposter syndrome. Market volatility. Instead, I answered honestly. Convincing people closest to me that my work was real. The room went silent. I continued. When you grow up being told stability only looks one way, you start doubting innovation. You start shrinking your dreams to fit their comfort. I didn't name them. I didn't have to. My turning point, I said, was realizing validation is not a prerequisite for success. Applause erupted. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't need to. After the panel, reporters approached me. Photos were taken. Marcus shook my hand proudly. And when I finally walked into the lobby, Mom grabbed my arm. Why would you say something like that publicly? Because it's true. You made us sound unsupportive. You were. Dad stepped in. Family matters stay private. I met his eyes. My humiliation wasn't private. Brianna, who had also come, whispered sharply, "You're enjoying this." I looked at her. No. I'm done hiding. And that's when she snapped. At least I didn't need to prove myself with one lucky contract. Lucky. 6 years. Countless rejections. Sleep deprivation. Self-doubt. Reduced to luck. I felt something cold settle inside me. This wasn't insecurity anymore. It was resentment. They didn't want equality. They wanted hierarchy. And I had disrupted it. 2 weeks later, Brianna announced her engagement. Lavish party. Country club venue. Guest list over 200. And guess who Mom volunteered to help coordinate the design and invitations? Me. Without asking. She'll handle the aesthetics, Mom told relatives proudly. She's very talented. Talented. Not professional. Convenient. I called Brianna. If you want me involved, we need a contract. Silence. A contract, she repeated. Yes. You're my sister. I'm also a business owner. Her tone turned icy. You've changed. No, I said. I've stopped being free labor. She hung up. 3 days later, she hired another designer. And then told relatives I was too busy to help. The narrative shift was subtle but intentional. I was becoming difficult, unapproachable, proud, all because I required respect. But they underestimated something. I had stopped needing them. Financially, emotionally, psychologically. And when you no longer need approval, power shifts. My company grew. 2 employees became 5. 5 became 8. We secured another major contract. Then another. By year's end, revenue crossed 7 figures. 7 figures. The same uncle who once asked if I was catering now asked if I offered internships for his son. I smiled politely. We have a competitive application process. He nodded awkwardly. Dad began introducing me to his business contacts. Not as charity, as leverage. But something inside me had crystallized. I no longer felt anger. I felt clarity. They didn't disrespect me because I lacked value. They disrespected me because they couldn't measure it. And once they could, they wanted ownership. But success without boundaries is just upgraded exploitation. And I wasn't going back to that kitchen. Not even metaphorically. The final crack before everything shattered came on Brianna's wedding day. But that deserves its own chapter. Because that was the day I realized. Revenge isn't loud. Strategic. And sometimes, it's simply walking away when they expect you to kneel. Brianna's wedding day was flawless. Of course it was. Outdoor vineyard venue. White roses everywhere. Crystal chandeliers hanging from a glass reception tent. A string quartet playing soft classical music as guests arrived. Everything elegant. Everything expensive. Everything perfectly curated. Just like Brianna. I arrived alone. Not because I didn't have options. But because I refused to bring someone into a battlefield disguised as a celebration. The moment I stepped out of my car, heads turned. Not because of my dress, but because of my reputation. By then, my company had expanded into 2 states. Industry blogs had featured us. Marcus had publicly credited me for spearheading one of the region's most successful rebrands. Suddenly, I wasn't the creative phase. I was the successful one. And that shift? It made people uncomfortable. Mom spotted me first. Her smile was wide, too wide. Elena, you made it. Made it. Like I was a guest with questionable reliability. I was invited, I said calmly. She adjusted my dress slightly. You look powerful. Not beautiful. Not lovely. Powerful. Even she could see it now. Dad approached, handshake ready instead of a hug. Pride mixed with something else. Caution. We're seating you at the family table, he said carefully. Of course they were. They needed optics. Successful daughter front and center. Proof that they had raised excellence. As if they hadn't mocked it. The ceremony was beautiful. Brianna walked down the aisle glowing. Her fiancé looked at her like she was the only thing that existed. For a moment, I almost forgot everything. Almost. Until the reception began. Champagne flowed. Music grew louder. And then came the speeches. Dad spoke first. He praised Brianna's discipline. Her structure. Her reliability. The same words he once weaponized against me. Then Mom took the mic. She cried gracefully. Spoke about how both her daughters had made her proud in different ways. Different. There it was again. Subtle hierarchy. Polite comparison. Then unexpectedly Brianna stood. I actually want to say something, she said, smiling sweetly. She lifted her glass. To family. To those who support you even when they don't understand your path. Guests nodded approvingly. And to my sister, she continued, eyes landing on me. Here it comes. I always worried about you, she said softly. You were so lost for a while. A few guests chuckled lightly. I'm glad things worked out in the end. Worked out. Like I tripped into success accidentally. My pulse slowed instead of rising. Interesting. I wasn't angry. I was detached. She thought this was subtle. It wasn't. It was deliberate. A final attempt to reassert dominance publicly. And that's when something unexpected happened. The wedding coordinator approached me quietly. "There's someone asking for you," she whispered. I frowned. At the entrance. I stood calmly and walked toward the vineyard gates. And there he was, Marcus, in a tailored charcoal suit, holding a small velvet box. Not a ring. A plaque. Behind him stood two familiar faces, representatives from a national business magazine. My heart skipped. "What are you doing here?" I asked quietly. He smiled. Timing. Apparently, the magazine had decided to formally present the Entrepreneur of the Year regional award in person, and Marcus insisted on doing it himself. Today. Now. At this venue. He hadn't known it was a wedding when he arranged it, but once he realized, he didn't cancel. He adjusted. Strategic. Just like me. "Are you comfortable with this?" he asked softly. I looked back at the glowing tent, at the laughter, at the curated perfection, and I realized something. For years, every milestone of mine had been minimized, reduced, mocked. Today, I wouldn't shrink. "Yes," I said calmly. We walked inside together. Conversations quieted instantly. Dad stood halfway from his chair. Mom's smile froze. Brianna blinked rapidly. Marcus requested the microphone politely. "I apologize for the interruption," he began smoothly. "But excellence doesn't always wait for convenient timing." The room fell silent. I had the privilege of working with someone extraordinary this year. A visionary whose work has reshaped regional branding standards. He turned toward me. "Elena Brooks." The applause started hesitantly, then grew, then intensified as cameras began flashing. He presented the plaque. Entrepreneur of the Year. 7-figure growth. National recognition. I didn't look at my family. I looked at the audience. And then I asked for the microphone. There was no shaking in my hands. No trembling voice. Just clarity. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I began. Soft laughter. But life has a way of creating full-circle moments. I paused. For a long time, I tried to earn validation from the people closest to me. The air shifted. I believed if I worked harder, achieved more, sacrificed enough, eventually I'd be seen. Total silence now. But success doesn't convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. And sometimes, I continued. The greatest milestone isn't financial. My eyes slowly moved toward the family table. It's realizing you were never behind. You were just ahead in a direction they couldn't follow. Someone gasped softly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't attack. I simply told the truth. "I'm grateful for every obstacle," I finished, "because it taught me something priceless." Pause. How to choose myself. The applause this time was undeniable. Sustained. Real. Not polite. Real. And in that moment, something irreversible happened. The narrative flipped. Publicly. Permanently. After the speech, guests approached me instead of the bride. Business cards exchanged. Congratulations offered. Brianna's smile tightened with every handshake I received. Finally, she cornered me near the bar. "You planned this," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I stopped preventing it. You always need attention." I tilted my head slightly. "I cooked for 50 people at your birthday." Her jaw clenched. "That was different." "Yes," I agreed. "It was." She stepped closer. "You think money makes you superior?" "No," I replied softly. "Boundaries do." Her eyes glossed over. Anger. Humiliation. Confusion. She had built her identity on being the successful one, the stable one, and I had shattered that quietly, without attacking, without screaming, just by rising. Mom approached us, voice strained. "Tonight isn't about you." I looked at her gently. It never was. And that's when I realized something profound. Revenge isn't destruction. It's detachment. It's refusing to play a role they assigned you. It's thriving without seeking applause from those who withheld it. I left early. Not dramatically. Not storming out. Just leaving. As I walked toward my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. No anger. No bitterness. Just peace. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. I didn't realize how wrong we were. I stared at it for a long moment, then replied, "You didn't want to." And I turned my phone off. Months later, I moved cities, expanded operations, opened a studio space with glass walls and sunlight pouring in. I hired interns, paid them well, respected their ideas. When young creatives doubted themselves, I told them, "Don't shrink for comfort." My relationship with my family became distant. Polite holidays, measured conversations, no more unpaid expectations, no more subtle insults. They adjusted, because they had to. And sometimes I think about that kitchen, the apron, the laughter, and I smile, because that girl, the one gripping a serving tray while being dismissed, she didn't know she was already powerful. She just hadn't stopped asking permission yet. I did, and everything changed. They said I didn't have a real job, but the real promotion was finally firing their approval.